I'm very pleased to introduce the next speaker for today's session, Dr. Behnam Tai. He is currently the Managing Director of CBN International, a former senior staff of the United Nations UN Habitat, and a visiting professor to the University of New South Wales, Sydney. Dr. Tai is a noted advisor to leading organizations and government agencies around the world in the areas of leadership, planning, and management in the context of capacity building and human resource development. So I welcome you, Dr. Tai, to proceed ahead with your presentation.
Thank you for your introduction, Madam. And then for the interest of time, I will be discussing poverty alleviation or poverty eradication in the context of poverty alleviation. Yeah, my presentation today will be divided into three parts. First, we look at definition, dimensions of poverty. The main objective is this, that we have all the same idea about what we are speaking about. And then we look at the magnitude of the problem, in this case, the macro level of poverty. And then, of course, most important, we look at some possible solution approaches to poverty eradication. At the outset, of course, I would like to acknowledge the enormous work that has been done in the field of poverty alleviation by various governments, various international agencies. I also would like in parallel acknowledge that still a lot remains to be done. My comment sometime is in the context of a lot needs to be done, and it is not criticism. First, my understanding of poverty, in this case, extreme poverty, is when, it is on the screen, broadly speaking, poverty refers to a form of economic, social, and psychological deprivation that prevent a group of people or an individual to have access to minimum resources for his well-being. For example, food, shelter, and so on. This is abject poverty. Literature also says extreme poverty. And then there is another word, sometimes we use relative poverty. Relative poverty has a different meaning. Relative poverty is the poverty between people, among population. Never all the population will be exactly at the same level. Even during communism, they could not achieve that. So there will be always differences between the financial capacity of individuals. Therefore, extreme poverty can be eradicated. Relative poverty can be alleviated, cannot be eradicated. Some economists believe, and there is a lot of debate in the literature about it, that inequality is different from poverty. Inequality between nations, between people, might increase. At the same time, poverty may decrease. But we argue in our workplace at CBN, and many agree with us, that a sustainable poverty eradication is attainable within the framework of abolishment of extreme wealth and poverty. You cannot eradicate poverty and you say, let the inequality does whatever it wants to do. So that's our point of view, and many agrees with us, some do not agree. dimension of poverty. When we are talking poverty, it is in a simple language. Sometimes we call poverty of money, absolute poverty, poverty of access, poverty of power. Of course, these things can be discussed a lot, but because I know my time is limited, I rush through, and during question and answer, if we need to discuss further, I am happy to discuss. For example, in this photograph, you see these two individuals. Their status is a status of abject poverty, extreme poverty. They probably need to do this in order to get their food. Don't know whether they have proper shelter or not. This is extreme poverty. Then here you get on the top, you see from the way the young people are dressed, they are not in the status of abject poverty, extreme poverty, but they don't have access to, in this case, electricity. They have to come and use the public electricity for their studies. There are a large number of people in the world, nearly billion, that do not have access to drinking water, electricity, sanitation, education, so on and so forth. So they may have enough money to survive, but they don't have adequate access to the services which is required. And the other photograph down, they have a shelter. People have shelter here. Probably they have food, but they don't have access to proper sanitation, sewerage, and so on. Here, different type of poverty. They have food to eat. They have shelter. They probably have electricity and water, but they don't have power. They don't have a say. They don't have, they are subject to discrimination of different type. Could be religious, could be caste, could be whatever, create gender, so on and so forth. So these are different types of poverty when we speak of poverty. But mostly today, our discussion is around eradication of extreme poverty. But these are things that could be discussed when there is more time. In this part of my presentation, I would like to convey to you the magnitude of the problem of inequalities and also the extreme poverty. Let's see a couple of statistics. In 1820, about 200 years ago, they took this is on the basis of the World Bank's report. They calculated per capita income of the people of 26 richest country with the poorest country. 200 years ago, the difference was 3 times. A person living in a poor country and rich country, the level of income, per capita income for the country was 3 times different. They repeated that survey in 1992. This is our own time. It was 72 times, a huge jump. 92 to 2000 up to 2016, much shorter period. It has become 141 times. This speaks hugely that the inequalities are widening. And then some philosophers, some well-known people, as I will speak about the New World Order, and abolishment of extreme wealth and poverty is essential in order to achieve eradication. Let us look at another example. Currently, it is not 100 years ago, it's now. Sub-Saharan Africa has 50 countries. They have got about approximately 1 billion people. 1 billion people, 50 countries, 1 billion people. Their GDP, gross domestic product, is 1.5 trillion. 1 billion people, 50 country, 1.5 trillion. This is current now. In the last couple of years, this has been done. Then Netherlands and Switzerland, 2 countries with 25 million people population, have exactly the same GDP. 25 million, 1 billion. And just to give you an idea of inequalities that exist today in the world. So we need to discuss poverty eradication in this context. We take the stand, the view, that unless and until these ills of mankind is addressed, you cannot talk only to eradicate poverty and allow these inequalities to remain. The next point, with regard to extreme poverty, United Nations very boldly set 2015 to eradicate extreme poverty. We know, literature says, and you know, we could not achieve that. We could not. But a couple of decades during, early 2000, and all, we were able to reduce the 2 billion people who were hungry, absolute poverty. We brought it to, a few years ago, 2013, we brought it to around 800 million. This is an achievement, but many argue, many economists argue, we also accept that this yardstick for measurement of identifying how many people are hungry is to some extent not very accurate and not acceptable to everybody. It was $1, became $1.25, and few years ago, in 2013 or so, it was raised to 2015, 1.90 US dollar. So if an individual earns less than this, he is categorized as being below poverty line. Many argue that this, for your information, if you make $1.90, you make it $2, number will go up. You make it $2.50, it will go up. Make it $3, $3.20, half of the population of the world will be poor, extremely poor. Therefore, this yardstick is not a yardstick that everyone accepts. The magnitude of the problem is huge. And then with regard to a number of the literature, again, indicate that we are talking about huge move, going upward from 2 billion to 800 million. People have written extensively that this jump was due to massive economic growth of China in the last 2-3 decades that moved millions above the poverty line, and also India. But the major part was in China. We know that today's statistic shows sub-Saharan Africa still The situation has got worse and not better. So therefore we have huge problem in front of us. This is just indicating the magnitude of the problem. If we take this $1.90 to raise it to 3.20, in 2015, economists argued that you move this, they say that even this is not enough. If you take $3.20 a day, then we will have 2 billion poor. Nancy Ersal, a renowned economist, say that people are struggling. This is too low. You should have $5.50 as the yardstick. In that case, half of the 7.5 billion population will fall below that. Problem is still very huge. Nelson Mandela says that overcoming poverty is not an act of charity. All leaders of the world, all people in power, please do not think that you are doing charity to people. It is your duty. It is your responsibility to do something about this. I believe if we don't do, they will do for us. The poor people will do for us. We have to be careful. Situation is still very, very acute. I have mentioned that just this was a few words to say that if in the last 30 years we have lifted some people from the poverty line, it has been mainly due to China and partly due to India, but many parts of the world, I mentioned sub-Saharan Africa, situation has got worse and not better. Possible solution. I know I don't have much time. I will just few more slides. Possible solution. One, every logical person knows resources are important, whoever is going to decide to eradicate poverty. We should increase and mobilize resources at the national and international level so that the resources could be allocated to the poor. Then we have to have a system, quality governance to be able to manage. I mentioned this for some reason. Of course, this is logical. Every person, we need resources and we need system. Augusto Topez-Claros, a renowned economist. He was head of the World Economic Forum when I met him in India. He has done extensive work on this field. He quotes Abd'u'baha, who said 100 years ago when he was traveling in the West about the principle and importance of abolishing extreme wealth and poverty. He just not expressed wishes. He had mentioned the number of principles, on the top being abolishment of the extreme wealth and poverty. How? Through income tax. At that time, there was flat tax. Still, Estonia, Russia, still they have flat tax. Graduating income tax, the more you earn, the more sort of you pay, but to a level that the owner will not be disheartened not to do economic activity. moderation, but the tax will be graduated income tax. This will bring in resources. And then, of course, this has been translated into a proper and detailed new world order that this principle can work. Then Rajiv Gandhi, I like this because I always refer to this. Rajiv Gandhi had said, we have poor, we allocate money. From 1 rupee, only 20 cents reaches them. 80 cents get lost in between. Indirectly, he had mentioned we need a mechanism, we need a system that today we call it good governance, efficient and effective governance. Although we have resources in the world, often, many parts of the world, you allocate new method of directly crediting in their account and all is some solution, but proper solution needs good governance to be able to implement that. We at CBN maintain that quality of national, international governance is extremely important. I may also say here, I don't know, there may be no time. At present, as far as international governance is concerned, the policy of poverty alleviation or eradication at the international level is, of course, in reality, is policy of poverty creation. Since most of the listeners are from India, India does not need aid, does not need help. If the international policy does not create conflict between India and Pakistan and China, that money could be easily used, part of that money, for poverty alleviation. This needs holistic approach. As Augusto mentioned, he argues about the new world order, that we need a new world order that holistically takes into account and take us out of this misery of extreme poverty. Madam Chairperson, how many minutes more I have? 5 minutes? 2 minutes? 5 minutes? Hello?
Dear sir, actually your time is over. Our next resource person is waiting for his turn.
Okay, then just one more, or I will not do this. I will do this. Okay, I will not do this. Kofi Annan had referred to Amartya Sen, that he speaks very nicely about poor. Kofi Annan says the world poor and dispossessed would have not a better person than Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, to speak about their case. And then my last slide is that these Nobel laureates articulate the situation. Rajiv Gandhi identifies the important area, and Augusto Topez-Claros highlights the principle, the new world order, that the wishes of Amartya Sen, Rajiv Gandhi, could be implemented for alleviation and eradication of poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tai, for such an eye-opening presentation. You have really thrown light on the magnitude of the real problem which exists today, the inequalities in global income distribution and also sharing the extreme poverty data and some possible solutions for alleviating the poverty.